Hi, I'm Pastor Kurt, and this is your 5-minute Bible study. Today, we're going to be looking at the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. So, Ezra and Nehemiah, 2 books I'm going to try to cover in one 5-minute video. So, these 2 books, even though they're separate in our Bibles, are meant to be read as one unit. In particular, the reason why they're important is because they cover when the people of Judah, who were captive in Babylon, this is when they were able to return back home. They were able to return because Cyrus, the king of Persia, conquered Babylon. And Cyrus said, I don't need all these other people here, just go home. Cyrus was even called a Messiah by the people for saving them from Babylon and letting them return home. Ezra is a Jewish scribe, and his job is to help reestablish Jewish customs in Jerusalem as the people head back home. Nehemiah served under the Persian king and was appointed as the governor of Judah to help rebuild the city walls. So Ezra, his main concern is basically reestablishing Jewish life and practices, whereas Nehemiah, his main focus was rebuilding the physical city. Now, Judah, the southern kingdom, was able to go home when Cyrus conquered Babylon. But remember, the northern kingdom of Israel was conquered by the Assyrians. We're never told that they were allowed to go back home. In fact, the northern kingdom, which made up of the northernmost 10 tribes, is now famously the lost 10 tribes of Israel. The theory is that the people just sort of assimilated with Assyrian culture. They were never conquered by an outside empire and allowed to go home, like how the people in Babylon were conquered by Cyrus and allowed to go back home. So when the people are reestablishing their home in Jerusalem, this is just Judah. This is just the tiny southern kingdom of Judah rebuilding the temple and trying to reestablish themselves. Well, early on in the book of Ezra, when we hear about the second temple being built, we hear that there was both celebration and mourning. The people were in exile in Babylon for approximately 50 years. So you can imagine this is the next generation of people who are trying to rebuild Jerusalem. When they're rebuilding the temple, it's not exactly like the temple was before, the one that was built by King Solomon. So there's rejoicing because they're able to go home and reestablish themselves, but there's mourning because some people might have remembered the old temple that Solomon built. And now they see this new temple being built, and they think, it's not the same. This isn't what we remember. There's a couple of really important things for us to think about when we look at this section in history. First, think about if you've ever felt like you've been in exile. We talked about this a little bit in the previous video. When you feel like your world is collapsing all around you, remember that God is still with you. When the people were able to return back home, they celebrated, they rejoiced. God had saved them through Cyrus. But now that they're there and trying to reestablish themselves, it's not quite what they remember. It kind of goes back to that old proverb, right? You can never go back home again. Things change. Life changes. Even when you try to do things like the way they were way back when, it's not going to be the same. Things are different now. You can build a second temple, but it's not going to be just like the first temple because you're living in a different time period now. Think about how life changes now. Think about how technology has changed. Think about how the life in the church has changed. Think about how our world has changed. things can't always be like they were before. But even in the midst of changes, even in the midst of trying to reestablish ourselves, God remains with us. This is the promise that we see here in these books, that as the people were trying to reestablish themselves back in Jerusalem again, realizing that it was not like it used to be, God was still with them. So no matter what change you are going through right now, no matter how you think your world is changing, no matter how you see that it's not like how it used to be, remember that God is still with you and God is still at work. There's your 5-minute Bible study for the day. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.